On Saturday, we were looking at the macro side of things, showing you guys how important this bar really is, taking out this high, and it leads us towards some kind of short squeeze that could be coming. But as we go into the shorter time frames, which I know a lot of people are short or are trading on those shorter time frames, so we're going to get into those today because there could be weakness along this move at any point. So we have to stay on our toes for any kind of lower high. But at this point, you would say some kind of short squeeze could come with that crossing of the MACD. So if you want to learn a little bit more about the macro side of things, look back and watch the previous video. It's really going to help you with that. But today we're getting into the shorter time frames for the SPY Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, NVIDIA, AMD, and Meta going forward. And we might look at a few other things like volatility that's telling us, hey, there is some weakness here, but I'm going to tell you what I'm leaning towards as we get into the SPY. The important thing here is what is happening in the SPY as of right now. We went down to that 20-week moving average. We talked about that on Saturday, and now we're getting these big swings in the upward direction, which is actually still in some flag consolidation here. We are still in this channel, which could be considered a flag at this point. So if that wants to break at any time, we could see something really dramatic happen. But the way that these weekly expected moves, which you're here for today, are lined up is really looking like we end up higher by the end of the week. Now, that's just what the probabilities are saying. If we do get some kind of pullback, which is what we're going to talking about this MACD, that most likely will base out and be able to turn back up. So what do we want to pay attention to for the SPY? Well, we want to pay attention to how low we could go for the entire week, and that would be 502.97. So if we come down to 502.97, remember, that is all the options market has priced in for the entire week. And if we get there early on in the week, there is a very high probability that we bounce, because when you break through these zones or test the bottom of them, you have a 68% chance to land here. So if you do this very early on in the week, the chance is you're either going to stay flat or see some wonky behavior to stay around this area, or you're going to see some kind of bounce. So this can be used as support. And then the top side of that will be 519.61. So something that would make a lot of sense looking at these weekly expected moves is what we'll talk about right after we give you those daily expected moves. So to the upside, 515.03 to the upside for Monday close, right? And then 507.55 to the downside. So on Saturday, before we even made these, we were leaning towards some kind of test of the bottom and then curling up. So I'm just going to keep this as simple as possible. This is what the options market has priced in for Monday. So if we make it outside of that, you have a 68% chance to land back in this zone. Okay, pay attention to that. We don't get a ton of very, very important data, not a ton of earnings anymore. So what could we be seeing? Another swing down like this. Now, if we swing down dramatically, get some kind of pullback, all I want to pay attention to is this 30-minute MACD. Whenever that curls up into positive territory, well, then the next big move is coming, and we very well might see that squeeze after we dip down one more time to find those buyers. The Qs, you need some points to pay attention to start off, right? So the weekly downside here, we're going to give the downside first because I think that's going to be more important early on in the week if we go down towards it. 426.07. So 426.07 is right where we need to hold up. And what would that do? It would keep you from breaking through this flagging going on as of right now. So what could we be seeing, and what do we want to be aware of? Well, if this 2-hour actually is able to fully roll over and go negative at this point, you'd say, hey, test the low, maybe even test the previous one down here. So I want us to be open to multiple scenarios here. So I'm going to talk about that one. If we do go negative here, you can notice how we have flatness of the MACD and flatness of the RSI down here. So that would lean me towards some kind of pullback at this point. But if that fully rolls negative, then you have a shot that something more dramatic is going to take place. So I just wanted to point that out. Now, what can we pay attention to for downside and upside, right? We already said the 426.07 to the downside for the weekly expected move, and the option market has priced in 444.89. Okay, so 444.89 to the upside is all the options market is pricing in. So if we do see some crazy bullishness come in early on in the week, just know we have that weekly and the monthly expected move up towards these highs. So really what we're leaning towards here is the 30-minute able to roll up. We see some kind of squeeze, but then we get outside of that monthly expected move and we see that daily divergence we talked about in the macro video on Saturday. But the reason that we're leaning towards the upside, right? Because even though we're talking about a pullback today, and sure, we got to talk about the daily ranges for tomorrow, 439.77 to the upside and 431.19 to the downside. This is all the options market has priced in for Monday. So what if we quickly come and fill that gap and then we turn right back around by Wednesday? That would make a lot of sense. It would get this MACD to beat down to the center line, curl back up for that next big move forward. Just remember though, if that daily MACD, if that daily momentum does want to take over, this could just ignore all that. So just pay attention to that going forward. That's why on Patreon, which is down in the link in the description, we actually said, this is a time to possibly hedge as you are taking out this level. You could just keep going because we're ending above that level. But if we wanted to reach down for some buyers, this would make a lot of sense, be some kind of bear trap, and then we see that turn around. So I just wanted to point that out because that looks very likely, and the MACD is way up in positive territory, way up here in positive territory. So in order for this to break down, it's going to take a lot of work, and most likely if you're going to break down, you're going to see something like this take place, not just break through this in one shot. So we'll pay attention to that. We can see some structure if we wanted to head down, right? I can draw some stuff up if we wanted to get a scenario to the downside. What would this be? Well, this would be left head, and then we come down to that point, maybe react up and get some kind of right shoulder. That's how we would break down. But just know that with the daily MACD crossing over, the probabilities are to the upside, right? That we're going to see some kind of upside move this week. And I want you to be aware of that. Now, if that does happen, it doesn't mean we can't see a pullback early on and then see that positivity come in. We are way overextended at this point. We've sat up here in overbought territory for quite some time, but we didn't get a huge push overbought on the 30-minute. So I think that if we dip down, this will be the big push to break out of all of this flagging and anything like that. I'm still leaning towards the upside because that daily MACD has crossed over and this 30-minute is well into positive territory. So we just have to watch, wait for that to beat down, and then boom, the next move is coming if we're able to cross up on this MACD. Apple is something we talked about on Saturday, having those divergences at the lows, and this is one of the only earnings we were like, from a risk to reward standpoint, you could probably risk some money that you're willing to lose, like even $500 or something like that, and then see a big move. And we saw a big move. Where did we get to? Well, we got above the daily expected move. We tried to just stay above that. You can see the little touches in here. That's pretty much right where that daily expected move was, right around 182. So at this point, what do we need to see? Well, we saw a breakthrough of a very important zone. Remember, we talk about zones a lot with Apple because it reacts to them pretty well. And these have been important zones for a long time. So once we break through this zone, what do we say? Well, we're going to head up towards this one. Look at us touch inside that zone and see that resistance come in. And now we could see a pullback. So when you break through a zone like this, Apple likes to do this a lot. It will retest that zone and then see the next big move up. And we can see that from this MACD up here on the 30-minute. We can see that needs some kind of pullback, probably to find some buyers. What would it do? It would turn the sell zone into a buy zone. We can dip down into there, get close to the center line on the MACD and roll back up. So this is a time where we could see another bullish move, but we might get some kind of pullback early on in the week, and we'll pay attention to our weekly ranges for Apple because they're a lot thinner this week. So you can pay attention to those weekly ranges that are down there in the description on Patreon and use those to give yourself a little edge in the market. If we start to dip below those, you have a 68% chance for a bounce, and you might even see that MACD starting to curl up and go positive here, and that would be a sign, hey, we are about to head to higher prices for Apple. So if you're looking to get bullish here, I'm telling you, even if it just did this and scooped up, this is a better place to buy than right now. Unless we're going to see that daily MACD take over, well, then we'd want to look for a stock that is a little bit more beat down so that we're getting a good price and not getting FOMO'd into a move. But just going forward, I just wanted to, usually we're bullish and bearish, but from this point, you really see how overextended we are unless we're going to just see some craziness happen. The probabilities are leaning towards, hey, some kind of pulling down, some kind of pulling back in price before we make the next move higher. Tesla's been playing this funny game with us, and we got the coin for when we go live. Yeah, we're live all week long, every single morning. So if you want to subscribe and like the video and join us every single morning, turn on those notifications so you know when we're going live. Usually it's right around 10 minutes before open, but we're live all the time talking about stocks in real time, and this is one we were talking about. Okay, it's been able to take back this 180.92 again as of the end of the day. So 180.120 as of the end of the day there. So we're able to see this explode higher. Now this MACD here, the 30-minute beat down to the center line, it's still trying to make that decision. So what can you do to make it a little bit cleaner? Look at the hourly. The hourly still hasn't turned up, and look how good that looks for another push higher. Right, we've scooped up. How would this go to the upside? Well, we're either going to do a little cup and handle at the gap resistance there, or we're going to see this fully complete the handle up towards this area, get the cup all the way up towards this area, get the handle, and then go up to our sell zone. Remember, we've been talking about Tesla when we saw those daily divergences. That's when we marked off this zone up here, like way up here. We said 205, 210 looks very, very likely for Tesla in the second push higher. So as of right now, you have the A, you got the B, Well, let's see if we can get a C, and all you need to happen here for some confirmation is that MACD to turn up into positive territory. Now, since this has already beat down and we could see some kind of pullback, I'll just look for a reaction, maybe at this gap fill if we see this pull down. But you also could see a time where Tesla actually buys up while a few other things have to back off because this already backed off. Okay, so pay attention to this with Tesla. I think this is the most powerful thing you can pay attention to for Tesla, the hourly here. Now, something on the 2 hour that we have to be open to is if we see some kind of divergence. We know, and if you took the course, which I'm leaving for 149 so people can ask questions about it live on Monday, and then that sale goes away. So you have till tomorrow to get the course for 149 before that price goes up. The link's down in the description. But what we're going to pay attention to here is as we get to this zone, do we see some kind of 2 hour divergence here? Because we know, according to, well, my course and all the back testing I've done, that 2 hour divergences like to roll over the daily. So if we're going to see that daily on Tesla actually remain negative, right? We're are able to turn back down into negative territory, continuing the negative trend that it's been in for some time, well, then maybe a 2 hour divergence is something to pay attention to. Okay, first of all, we want to pay attention to times where we could roll over quickly and see some kind of downturn into negative territory. If we are going to go higher, though, once we get there, maybe that 2 hour divergence just leads to a more dramatic pullback, and then we see this scoop up. Okay, you can see it on your screen. You see the big left shoulder. You see the head here, and what if we create that right shoulder to get that structure to go even higher? So this can last for some time. But I'm really thinking that CPI is going to be important, NVIDIA earnings are going to be important. It'll be interesting to see how this develops. But right now in this shorter time frame video, we're just talking about, hey, what's going to be the next move? What's the price action look like? We're always following the price action, and we're always trading like water, willing to be bullish, willing to be bearish whenever the signals tell us to. Amazon, we talked about this on Saturday, and this is going to be an interesting trade for Amazon because you could see a time where, remember, there was insiders selling throughout this entire move, especially when we got in here. We noticed those insiders, Jeff Bezos selling a bunch, and we see a dramatic drop off. What happens? Well, we created this point of 166. Once we had this high up here, we were like, okay, 166.12. We can almost touch it to the T, and then we see that big bounce from there. So now we're curling up. Look where we are. Positive territory. So I want you to keep that in mind, and we could just see some kind of little divergence. If you want more about this, go check out that video from Saturday. So what do I want to pay attention to? Well, this 2 hour just keeps on going up into positive territory. So if this just wants to remain positive, we can see more positivity. I can pay attention to daily divergences, even 30-minute divergences at this point. So you see the 30-minute here for Amazon. There's something a little different here that I wanted to talk about. Yes, the MACD is going to a higher point, so the likelihood that this is a pullback coming is pretty high, and maybe we just want to retest this level we broke out of somewhere towards 180. All right, now the reason I'm leaning towards that would get us towards the center line and curl back up. Why am I talking about a pullback? Well, because the RSI is proving some divergence here at this level, so maybe it needs to dip down to gain some more buyers in order to head higher. Now, this would make sense because this would almost be a full cup completing here, and then we get that handle that then pushes us a little bit higher. Now, if we see a little reaction on Monday or something like that, look for that to fade because we really probably do need some more buyers in this move in order to head higher for Amazon because we're just trickling up. We see some divergences pop up. Now, it's not at the same time as the MACD, so if you took the course, you would know about how significant that is, and it looks like we could see some kind of pullback because this is just on the RSI right now. Now, later on, we're going to probably see this pull down, then pop up like this. Okay, this would be a point to pay attention to, a divergence on the MACD and RSI at the same time. That would be very interesting. But just remember, this move can extend for quite some time. So if we are going to squeeze, just pay attention to when that 30-minute is rolling up into positive territory, and you're always going to be a part of the next move. Now, one thing that is kind of saying I could reverse my trend is NVIDIA. Okay, so I'm going to really be paying attention to my weekly expected moves on Patreon down in the description, but you can see the 30-minute here showing you a big divergence at this point on the MACD and RSI at the same time. So this could tell me, hey, this price point here, we could see a more dramatic pullback. So what's the first area I want to pay attention to? Well, where did we last bounce from, and what zone have we been paying attention to a lot? Remember, support came here. Support tried to come here. We lose it. We drop dramatically. We then use it again as resistance once we break through it, right? We touch the top of it. We use it as resistance. We fall down. When we break through it, what do? We talked about this with Apple. We break through an important zone. We retest in it. I should put a thumbs up on this, and thank you guys for subscribing because we called this pretty much to a T, saw this big bounce come in, and then this right here was a big hint that that selling with the Fed was not real because NVIDIA able to hold up at higher prices at that point. Then we get some good data. Okay, now we can go off to the races. So now you're seeing that divergence. What can that do? That can roll over the 2 hour. Now the 2 hour is showing that divergence as well. Okay, so I'm just saying that we could see a time where NVIDIA does actually back off, and I really have to be on my toes with this one, because if this starts to go negative, that means we have potential of starting some kind of negative trend here. All right, so pay attention to that going forward. We may even have to pay attention to a 4 hour if we want to maybe get a stronger base down here before we actually head higher. Now, am I leaning towards a full breakdown for NVIDIA? Not necessarily. I'm still seeing those signals on the macro scale that say we could squeeze from here. Maybe we just need some kind of fake out to gain those buyers, get back into this zone where the buyers have stepped in a few times, and then we can see that reaction up. And then we very well could be seeing NVIDIA hit 1,000 before it actually has its earnings. But we are open to multiple scenarios. So if this starts to go negative and break through this zone, retest it, go again, we know, hey, yeah, the direction is down for now, and we want to pay attention to signals in the other direction. AMD doing something huge. It's confirming something at the end of the day on Friday, and that was this 2 hour divergence was actually able to get a green impression on the histogram. Okay, so I wanted to point that out early on and say, hey, yeah, this has a chance to roll up. The daily has been beat up for a long time. We talked about this on Saturday's video, and we even mentioned the divergence, right? So you have a point where you have 2 hour divergence and you have daily divergence down here at the same time, right by the 200, right in a zone that we've been paying attention to. So what could happen from here? Well, I would pay attention to 165 and 183.20 over this month. So what could happen this week? Well, maybe we want to actually base out even better with, you see the MACD behavior here. We could curl over and go negative here, actually creating some kind of divergence at this point that would give us a very strong 30-minute base. And then at that point, that 30-minute base could be what really gets that 2 hour going and getting that daily to really flip bullish, fully bullish here, which is getting out of this zone. So if we get out of this zone, what could be happening going forward? Well, we could react all the way up to 165. I'd more so pay attention to these previous highs up here, and then we can maybe see some kind of dip down and get a head and shoulders, kind of like it looks on Tesla. So at this point, AMD's been beat down for a long time. You have to be cautious with this. And as you see the 30-minute here, it looks like it needs to curl back down to get some buyers. If it does want to just explode from here, maybe fill the gap, base out and go, okay, well, this is in positive territory. That makes total sense. We're not overbought at this point. So if we want to make some kind of big move, look for that to still touch into this zone again before the next move. So if this is going to extend for a little bit, we can still be patient, wait for that opportunity, and see that next move going higher. At least that's how I like to do things. Meta has been struggling for quite some time. It was able to do the cup and handle, but not able to take back 453.08 convincingly at this point. Now, we could still get that reaction up, but I just wanted to point out how there are divergences on the RSI, but not the MACD right now. So early on for Meta, we actually could experience some kind of pullback to gain some more buyers down in this liquidity. I'll be paying attention to my weekly moves pretty much on every chart, because if we see selling early on in the week, that actually might be an opportunity to be a part of some kind of squeeze coming. So I'm paying attention to this, but since we didn't take 453.08 back, I have to be able to think of the other side of the coin, and this is going to be the downside. Okay, so if we're going to see dramatic fall from here, then the 2 hour is going to curl over into negative territory. So what I'm kind of mentioning and leaning towards is some kind of brief pullback, maybe for a day or two, and then we see that turn back around. What could happen here? Maybe it wants to create a divergence first, right? Maybe we want to go down to that weekly expected move and do something like this. That would make a lot of sense, and then that would really gear us up for a big move going forward. But we're open to the downside. Anytime this curls over into negative territory on the 2 hour, you're going to see it test the lows or go make a new one. And if that just continues, then we can just keep making these lower highs. We can keep making lower lows. So be open to anything, but also just note how these trades can set up for you. Creating these scenarios will really help you out as a trader. Now, Microsoft is something that we mentioned on Saturday as well. So I just wanted to talk about this one, probably the last stock we're going to look at before we get into volatility and stuff. What I wanted to mention here was these 2 hour divergences. That's why we posted this to our Patreon down in the description. That's right, we even post some good trade setups. I'm trying still to do a video a week for Patreon, but my baby girl keeps us pretty busy these days as she's starting to learn more new things. So right now we're seeing what do we see? We got divergence here. We have multiple point on the MACD. We've talked about this before. We have triple divergence on the RSI, and this played out. I should put a thumbs up on this and congratulate anyone if they were taking this play, because that was a very, very good trade. I actually took it myself. I took some off of the table as of right now because it looks like some kind of pullback could be coming. So even though the 2-hour is creeping up into positive, what if this just drops off one more time? Okay, we've had some volatility increasing, and volatility showing us some stuff that we're going to go over right after we get finished with Microsoft here. So what's happening on the 30-minute? Well, first of all, we're moving sideways. So because we move sideways on this 30-minute, we still can see that pop higher. Maybe we want to test this level up here of like 413. But as of right now, you'd say, I'm overbought. I look like I need a pullback in order to head higher. So what if we come down and fill this gap? That would look very good for us. We'd curl down towards that center line, curl back up into positive territory. And I think this is going to be a massive move here. So if we're going to see that short squeeze, I believe Microsoft's actually going to see some kind of big move if we're able to buy, gain some buyers down in this area. Now, why are we talking about a pullback? When you look at the 30-minute for volatility, which if volatility increases, you can see the stock market sell off a little bit. So why are we paying attention to this? The 30-minute, no real divergences here, some flatness down on the RSI, some little divergence in the near price action, but the 2-hour is really what we want to pay attention to. I know this is pointing down at this point, but if we see some kind of turnaround because of those 30-minute divergences on NVIDIA, we can read into this a little. And if that starts to confirm, we could actually see some kind of sell-off that then gets us up towards 1683, and then we can see that back off. So as of right now, we have to pay attention to this turning up, but note that on the daily scale, we talked about this on Saturday's video a little bit more extensively, but we'll just talk about it a little here. Just note for volatility on the daily scale, this is the sign that you're going to see some kind of short squeeze, or at least the probability is there for it. You can see little selling come in early on, but then eventually it really does start to take over. We get the VIX down towards 1212. So this is really what I'm paying attention for volatility. And anytime that daily curls up, that's when I think we might have ourselves a major top. So we're paying attention to this going forward. We're still paying attention to that level of 13 and 1212. But because you have those 2-hour divergences and I'm seeing like the SPY needs a pullback, the Qs need a pullback, I can read into that because it's happening at the same time. So that's what you really want. You want the stuff you're seeing on volatility to match up with some kind of need for a pullback, need for a drop, or some kind of sell-off signal proving itself on the SPY at the same time. So if we get that 30-minute on the SPY to roll over and this 2-hour confirms something, we could actually see volatility start to scale up from here. So let's just be cautious. And you have to be a little cautious here as well. I'm just going to make this last note, because the 50 is touching that 200, starting to point back down just a little bit. But if that just turns up at any time, you have the 50 above the 200, that's a massive crash signal. So just be cautious of that. But as we are rejecting from there, the probabilities are with you that we're going to see some kind of squeeze, maybe after we shake out some people who bought at the top on Friday. So the main takeaway here is on the macro side, we're seeing a lot of signals that say, hey, we could get a short squeeze, but those do have pullbacks sometimes, okay? So because we've had volatility kind of be up and down, and we've seen that 30-minute really get those big crossings, we could see some kind of drop to go gain some buyers. And we have those levels to pay attention to because you're subscribed to this channel. You get those daily and weekly expected moves for the SPY and the Qs, and they're very, very helpful. So getting the Patreon if you're trading an individual stock is very, very good if you're following any of the stocks that we cover. So just pay attention to that going forward, because the shorter time frames are saying pullback, while the macro side is saying, hey, we might get some kind of squeeze. Now, I just wanted to thank you guys again. I hope you had a great weekend, but thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Liking, subscribing. If you want to learn about this stuff, check out the course. It's $149 until tomorrow. And if you're not wanting to get it today, you want to ask some questions, you can join us live and ask some questions about it. And people who have taken the course are usually live, and they can tell you a little bit about it and how it has really helped them. Really help them out. So thank you guys so much for watching. I wish you nothing but luck going on into tomorrow. I'm going to join you live tomorrow morning, and I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. Peace.